Yes, hello everyone. How's it going? What's the crack? My name is Michael, and welcome back to the Mick podcast for episode number 10. I hope everyone's keeping well. I hope everyone's having a great day wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening from, and I thank you so much for doing so. I really, really appreciate it. Apologies for there being no intro there for the start of this episode. I'm recording this episode using a different laptop than I have done for the previous nine, and in a word, it's crap. So I don't have any of my other stuff on it, any of the like audio intros, all that technical stuff that no one really cares about. So that's why we've just gone straight in for the kill with no intro today. So this is an episode that's coming off the back of the most contentious, one of the most debated US presidential elections in history. And I know this is like normally a sports podcast, so you're wondering how can I spin an election result into a sports podcast? Well, in brief terms, many people know that the US system for voting in a president is quite unjust. You can have millions more votes than someone and still not become the winner of the election. So I thought, what's the most unjust thing that's ever happened in sports or that we've seen happen in sports? And I put out the call on Facebook and I put it out on Twitter, and I got a ton of responses back. Before we get into them, let me just say that if you're watching this on YouTube, the audio won't be as good as it would be normally, because I'm not using this microphone. I'm just using my phone for the audio. If you're listening on Spotify, Podbean, Anchor, wherever you normally listen to my podcast, then the audio should hopefully sound as it normally does. If you hear loud cracking bangs in the background, I haven't moved to the Gaza Strip. I'm just living in England in the middle week of November, where people like to let fireworks off every 45 seconds of the day, some of which I feel like are landing in the garden out the back of the halls here. Just clearing that up. It's been quite the week for fireworks. Now I don't mind them, but a lot of people have been doing quite a bit of giving off. What else have we? Blah, blah, blah. Yes, so basically that's it. No intro. Audio might sound a little bit different for those watching the YouTube, and fireworks. So when I say things that are unjust in sport, like what I was hoping, and I did get this for people to reply with things that made them angry or things that frustrated them or decisions that were just plain wrong. And I have over 20 of them here that people have replied with, so I'm not going to dwell on each one for too long. I'm sort of going to race through them, talk a little bit about them, my experience, because there's a lot of these I'd never heard of. I actually had to go and research, which is probably more homework than I've ever done for anything ever. So yeah, we'll start in, and again, they're in no particular order. So like, don't think, oh my god, that was worse than that, or this was so bad and that wasn't. I've just listed them in the order in which I got sent to me, and yeah, as I said, there was a great pile. So in just wrong decisions, whatever you want to call it. The first one that I have wrote down is, and a lot of people might remember this, when Roy Carroll for Manchester United fumbled the ball and like about a foot over the goal line when they were playing Spurs. Mendes shot from about the halfway line after he'd caught Carroll off his line, and yeah, he got away with it. It was giving us no goal. I remember even back then they were saying we need video replays and we need different ways to, like, goal line technology to prove that that ball had so clearly, which it did, cross the line. As a United fan, I'm not complaining. We got away with one, and there's nothing else to it. Speaking of ones that went across the line, now I probably would have helped if I wrote these in sort of like sinking order on the book, but I didn't. Frank Lampard in the World Cup. I'm sure most people. This was sort of the real turning point for getting goal line decisions, or goal line technology and VAR introduced to the game. Frank Lampard versus Germany for England in the World Cup in 2010. Lampard had a shot from just outside the box, went over the keeper's head, come down off the crossbar, and was well, like even further so than the Mendes shot, was much further behind the line. I can't imagine how the English supporters would have felt at that. Even watching it back, you're like that. That is just you see it in real time. You see it initially. The fans, the players, the commentators all react as if it's a goal, and the referee just says no. He's just not having any of it. That one was a major turning point in how these things are dealt with. But yeah, it was a tough one to swallow for England fans and the so-called golden generation of English football. Um, VAR, VAR, whatever the hell you want to call it, um, is not making a lot of friends at the minute. Sort of got off on the worst possible foot for its introduction to football. I'll not dwell on this too long, simply because you could write a book alone on the amount of decisions that have been made wrongly. The example that came up was the Mane offside against Everton a couple of weeks ago. Even just today, before I started recording this, Patrick Bamford was allegedly offside by a toenail, which of course had to overrule a goal against Palace. But the one that annoys me the most, the one that really irks me, and this is why I don't want to talk about it because I'll really go off on one, is the Martial red card against Spurs 3 or 4 weeks ago, when Spurs beat United 6-1. We'll not talk about that. Yeah, he was given a red card because he reacted to Eric Lamela, like tapping him, slapping him on the face. Martial done something extremely similar back to him, yet he was shown the red card. Lamela was only a yellow. How can you justify? How can a referee or the people that are working in Stockley Park say, "Hey, his is the red card, yours isn't. Play on." That's There have been a lot of awful decisions, but that's the one that I watched and said VAR needs to it either needs to change or it needs to go, and I need to move on from this because, as I'm sure people are starting to hear, it's not one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Unsurprisingly, what else have we in GAA? Does anyone remember the Leinster final of 2010 between Louth and Meath? Meath. Yeah, that game ended in controversy big time. A lot like a high looping ball into the box. First of all, it was a square ball, so it should have been a free out then. Then he took a shot, and I can't remember who it was. I probably should have searched the names of this actually. Anyway, basically, at the heels of the hunt, the ball was thrown into the net, which anybody who knows the rules of Gaelic football knows that is illegal. There was just so much wrong with that sequence of play, and Louth were well and truly screwed over. On a national level, everybody saw that. And to this day, you still see the highlights of the fans getting angry, the players charging at the referee. The referee had to be like immediately dragged off the pitch for his own safety. Because it was just such an awful decision. Awful decisions can also be used to describe these next two, which are on the list. Well, most of these actually. In the NFL, there's three here for the NFL. Two are related to a catch. Was it a catch? Was it not a catch? And one of them's just related to the reason why Tom Brady had a dynasty in the first place. And that's a very niche reference that only certain people will understand. But the first two, Des Bryant's catch, no catch against the Packers in the divisional round in 2015. Basically, in American football, there's a certain, like, you can catch the ball, but unless you establish yourself properly as someone who's carrying the ball, then it doesn't count as a catch. Now, this will get quite complicated for people that don't understand. But briefly, he caught the ball, he fell to the ground, the ball fell out of his hands, even though he'd already caught the ball, and it didn't count. Still to this day, that outrages thousands of people because they believe he caught it, some believe he didn't. Hell, whatever. My personal opinion is that he did catch it. And in today's rulings, because they've adjusted the rules since then, I think it would stand. The other one was the NFC Championship game of 2018, where the Saints and the Rams pass interference call led to one of the most highly debated events in the sport's history. Basically, for anybody that doesn't watch American football, if two people are going to catch the ball, the attacker and the defender, it has to be done so fairly. The defender can't in any way, shape or form interfere with the attacker's attempt to catch the ball. Now, once he has the ball, he can tackle him, he can do whatever he wants. This usually happens between two people that are side by side. On this one particular play, there was a guy wide open, was about to catch the ball, and an opponent came from like 30 yards the other side of the field and just speared him before he could catch the ball. And it was the most blatant case of what's called pass interference ever, and it wasn't called. And it led to court cases, it led to people in New Orleans like parading around the street claiming how much of a joke the NFL was. It was huge. The tuck rule, that's what I'm talking about for Tom Brady, changed the face of NFL rules and changed the face of Tom Brady's career massively. Tom Brady fumbled the ball. The referee and then the Raiders collected it, and then they said the game was more or less over. Tom Brady couldn't go on to win. They went back and they looked at it, and for some strange reason, whatever the ruling was, they said that it wasn't a fumble. So there's all the NFL speak out of the way for those that aren't interested, and I hope you've managed to make your way through it. I've tried to make that as brief and as clear as possible. You probably haven't a clue what I'm talking about, and that's fair enough, because we'll go back to talking about football now. The Northern Ireland football team were denied a chance of making it to their first World Cup since 1982. 1982. When a handball was wrongly called against them in a qualifier game against Switzerland. The ball hit the defender on the back, and the referee deemed that it was a handball, and the penalty then that was given as a result screwed them over. They lost out big time because of that. They conceded that goal, penalty given, game over. That was an awful decision. I remember that well. And a couple of people mentioned the referee in the Chelsea-Barcelona game of 2009. There was a couple of, how would we word them, off decisions, and apparently the referee was under pressure from UEFA not to have another all-English final like they did in 2008, which Man United went to and won and beat Chelsea, just in case anybody forgot, and will not mention what happened in the 2009 final. Thank you very much. Moving swiftly on, there's so many of these. I'm going to race through these next couple because I know I've dragged this out quite a bit. The Jesse James non-touchdown catch versus the Patriots. Yep, that was another joke. One where he caught the ball, deemed he hadn't caught it. Joe Jordan's handball for Scotland, which sunk Wales. I'd never heard of this until I was sent a news article about it, and I read up on it. And to this day, Jordan is stubborn, just admitting that he done no wrongdoing with that handball. Nothing happened, and it wasn't his fault. So I don't think he'll ever give out the truth on that. The Luis Garcia ghost goal versus Chelsea for Liverpool. Again, hate painting Liverpool in a positive light in any way, shape or form, saying that it even was a goal. It wasn't. The ball was nowhere near crossing the line. The other night, Lewis Nani's red card, which absolutely was not a red card. I'm not sure if anybody's seen it. Nani leaving the field of play in tears, upset that he'd been wrongfully dismissed, even with the help of VAR. So they're making the right decisions, and then they're making the wrong decisions. Granted, it might have been a yellow, but to come back then and say it was a red card, it was just completely scandalous. Robin van Persie's red card against Barcelona in the Champions League when RVP was offside. RVP was on a yellow, was offside, continued playing, and shot. Within the space of 1 second of the whistle going, the referee followed up, gave him his second yellow and sent him off, which is probably the worst. Second to the Martial one, because I'm just being biased. It was one of the worst red cards ever. Shanks said about the Lakers and the Kings Game 6 in 2002, where one of the referees came out and alleged the other officials of fraud, basically, and saying they were trying to rig a game. There was quite a bit of drama that fell out from that game. This one hurts. Now, this isn't exactly a sporting injustice as opposed to just a horrible coaching decision. Super Bowl 49, the Seattle Seahawks, which is the team that I support, were on the 1 yard line about to score a touchdown and win their second consecutive Super Bowl. They have the best running back in football. All you have to do is give him the ball, he'll run it in, touchdown, you beat the Patriots, game over. No. They threw the ball, Russell Wilson was intercepted, and the rest is history. There's fireworks going off now for anybody wondering why it sounds like I'm about to get shot. Yeah, that Seahawks decision, that will never be lived down, regardless of how long Russell Wilson plays, how long Pete Carroll coaches. That ruined their chance at like starting a proper dynasty, because they would have held on to so many key players if they won 2 in a row. The time Gaza was booked for Rangers, the referee dropped his yellow card on the floor. Gascoigne found it and ran over and booked the ref in a joking manner, of course, and the referee was in no mood for games and turned around and handed the card straight back to him and booked him. Chrissy Conway mentioned the time Leeds. Now, I don't know if this is unjust or if this is just true sportsmanship, but the time Leeds had to concede to Villa after Leeds scored against Villa when they had a player down. I remember watching this live and couldn't believe what was happening, and the fact that the Leeds manager was instructing his players to just let Villa score. That was a crazy time. Marcelo Bielsa is, for lack of a better word, not a nutcase. So it comes as no surprise that he would do something like this. But again, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to disagree with you, Christopher, and say that I don't think that's unjust. I think it was just sportsmanship. However, it's a bit of a kick in the teeth, considering then that Leeds didn't go up that year. The Montreal Screwjob, for any wrestling fans out there, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, scandal in the sports history, in Vince McMahon's history. Brett didn't tap, and the referee says that he did. And he was in his home city, his home country, was then screwed out of winning the championship. That was the more you watch the video back, the more you can't believe that the referee even done anything about it. This next one caused quite a stir in the Facebook comments. Now nobody fell out, thankfully, but the time Michael Schumacher deliberately crashed in order to help himself on his way to winning the World Championship. That came in from my younger brother Connor. But Aisling and all the Dixons got involved quite swiftly and said that basically that the ground Michael Schumacher walks on is sacred, like, what's that word? Is holy, basically, and that he can do no wrong. So thanks, Connor, for your suggestion. I agree. I know I'll get shouted at by all the Dixons for that. That it's just not very sportsmanlike, and the Dixon family will disagree with me that it was perfectly fine, which it wasn't. But we'll move swiftly on before I lose myself some friends at the heels of this. So we're moving on to the last one here, just to wrap it up. The time Mick Conlan was screwed over at the Olympics. I'm not sure if anybody remembers that. Mick Conlan, obviously now a professional boxer and doing quite well for himself. But he started off at the Olympics, and his fight went against him in a fight that he clearly won, and he came off then and he was dropping F-bombs and S-bombs live on TV, and he called out the corruption that there is in boxing, and yeah, that clip sort of went viral, and since then Colin has then went on, and I don't know whether he's undefeated or not, but he's doing quite well for himself, and that's where it all started with his outburst at the Olympics. Right, so there's 20 minutes of me rambling through. I hope I've been able to hold your attention for this amount of time. For those watching on the YouTube, here's just a brief look that I wasn't just making all that up. I have in fact, been researching, been doing a bit of work. Even at that, I've probably still got some things wrong. So I'm hoping to have a couple of guests lined up. I just need to make sure this laptop that I have is working properly. I have 2 in the pipeline that I'll hopefully get recorded once I know that my internet isn't going to screw me over, basically. But yeah, that's it for the injustices. For those that have been keeping up to date with the Instagram and the Tuesdays and the US election updates, well, you'll be pleased to know now that I'll be no longer melting your heads because the election updates are finished. Tuesdays, for anybody that's not aware of what that is basically every Tuesday I'm uploading a poll or a quiz or something for you to choose from on Tuesday, which is where the clever name came from. So you can find that on the Mick podcast Instagram page. You can find me on Twitter at MichaelLowry98. If you have me on Facebook, please keep commenting and sharing on all the statuses I put up, because as I say, none of this would have been possible without everybody getting involved, and that little book that I just shown you is full of comments from people that have helped me make these episodes, and I thank you so much for all your interaction, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you all in the next episode of the Mick podcast. Thank you.